So hello, Lisa. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
It is wonderful. Now, I've introduced you to my listeners, and so they know that you're an organizer. They know that you are a coach. They know that my dog is currently barking because this is the thing that is happening now. Hey, why don't you go out there? There we go. We're going to do that instead. Fabulous, Gerald. You can just leave that in, edit it out, however you see fit. People know I have dogs. Okay, so published author. Your book, More Space, More Time, More Joy. You're an organizer, you're a coach.
Yes.
You were recently, up until the end of this year, 2022, you were the president of the South Shore Women's Business Network.
Yes.
So I have to ask you this, just starting it out, is how do you do so many things without overwhelming yourself or putting too much pressure on yourself to do all of the things?
I love that question because my grandmother, who raised 14 children, had a wonderful phrase, and she said, "You can't grow babies and flowers at the same time. You can't grow babies and flowers at the same time," which basically means that there are different stages for your life. So my background is, I had a pretty traditional background. I went to high school, I went to college, I worked in the corporate world. And then I sort of, from there, was raising a family and branching out and trying to do different things. So those were all segments of my life. And I didn't really find the time to write the book, or the book really wrote itself, until, my kids were grown and out of the house, and I really had time to focus on me. So I would say to anyone who struggles with, I want to do all the things, but you can't do all the things at the same time. I think that's the balance that we're all striving for.
I love that so much because it's funny, right? Like this book, you wrote the book and the book is out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like when you look back on your life, there was a period of time where you were writing. Yeah. And that may not have been the period of time where you were the president of SSWBN, right? So
Right.
you were able to do these things, but you were able to do them because you did them consecutively, not trying to do them concurrently.
Yeah. And some of them, some of it is organic, right? Like we gather all these experiences. People always say, "How did you get to be an organizer? What training do you have?" And certainly there's training to be an organizer, but I always say everything I've done in my life led me to where I was supposed to be. Like literally, this is exactly what I feel I was meant to literally put on earth to do. And that's a wonderful feeling, but I didn't know that when I was 20 or 25 or 30 or even 40. It took me a long time to get here, and I'm thrilled to be here. But all of the things we do in our lives, so don't discount this experience, or don't discount this job, or this experience in your life, because it does all build. And I'm thrilled to be at a point in my life where I can look back and say, oh yeah, all of that made perfect sense. Being president of a networking group, or serving in your community, or doing whatever it is you're doing in your job, your family, your community, it all adds up. And I think that's the beautiful place to be, and to see that.
I love that. When I was started doing the recording for the introduction, one of the things I talked about was that when I first, and this is the one that I recorded and then had to stop because the dog started barking, but I was talking about how you have this calm, like the way I described it was that Lisa has this demeanor that she's got it all figured out. When I see you, you're just so calm. And I just see you're like, I'm like, God, she just has it all figured out. But the more I get to know you, the more I realize is that it's like you said, you've figured out how to compromise with yourself. You figured out how to sacrifice, this one thing now so that you can do this other thing instead. And instead of saying, I'm going to try to do all the things. And by doing that, you have somehow achieved what it is that we all try to achieve by doing all the things at the exact same time. So it's almost like we're doing it the wrong way, right? So we're trying to do all the things, and I'm trying to do it now. And you're like, you don't have to do it now. You can do one thing then do something else after, then do something else after. And then by the time you get to your 40s or 50s, you have done all these things. It's all there.
I think it's all the parts. And I think part of the problem, Vanessa, to be honest with you, is this social media conscious world that we live in. We go on social media, we see, our peers, if you will, other business owners or friends or whomever, and they seem to be living these perfect lives with these perfect meals, these perfect family vacations, this perfect job, this perfect vacation. And none of it is perfect. And I think when we are honest and authentic, and show, the day that you're as much a hot mess or you're eating pizza as the day you've made this, 4-course meal. And I think That's why so many people struggle. Many of my clients struggle. And I talk about this in the book, that perfect is the enemy of done, right? They
Yeah.
can't get out of their own way to start a project because they need it to be perfect, because they think that they need to, Instagram that, and they need to, TikTok it or whatever. And I think that that's part of the challenge for all of us, is we're trying to, whatever it is you're trying to build, you need to build it incrementally. You need to have some sort of plan, baby steps, or however it works for you. But let go of that illusion of perfect, because that is really what holds us back. That really is the shoulding that we're doing.
That really is. We are
Yeah.
such perfectionists. I remember when I was when I lived in my old house, so many moons ago, I lived in Franklin, and I had an organizer. Well, okay, the organizer came later. My basement was it was where we dumped everything, and as many people do. So it started to pile up. There was this giant pile of trash, like, just because we just started throwing things down the boxes and whatever. So it became unmanageable, unwieldy. And every time I'd go down there, I think I'll start doing this. And then it started out with me feeling like I wanted to clean because I wanted a clean space. But then you're exactly right. I'd be like, oh, I could take a picture of this for Instagram. And then I'm like, oh, well, then it has to look this way. And then I would just get so caught up, and it's like in like how it has to look, and I'm going to do this. And then I'm like, oh my God, this is too much work. And then I would leave the basement without having done anything, because it had just become such a big thing in my head. I was like, I just don't want to do this. It's too much pressure.
So I think that's so important. We talk about, 5 small habits or atomic habits, or those things that are sort of incremental that get us to the place. We had a great event with Michelle Wardeman, who's a fantastic life coach, right before the holidays. And she talked about that. She said, if you want to get organized, if you want to get financially fit, if you want to do better with your healthy eating, or whatever it is your goal is or your intention is, don't make it, I'm going to run the marathon in April. It can't be, I'm going to organize my whole house. It can't be, I'm going to, get rid of all of my debt in 12 months. That's not how it works. We have to break it down, right? In school now, they teach math as chunking. We got to chunk it into something that makes sense for ourselves, or it does become so overwhelming. We literally just freeze, right? So we pull everything out. We're going to get organized in a day or a weekend. And what happens? We get overwhelmed and we just shove it back in, and it just gets worse. And so I think that's, again, part of it is we have this image of what we think it should look like, or how we should be. Like, we're living this storybook life. I have clients with closets full of gorgeous clothes and jewelry. And I say, why aren't you wearing it? And they said, I'm saving it for someday. So as I say, this is my new phrase: some is not a number, and soon is not a time, right? So if not today, then when? If you're not going to start wearing it now, what are we saving it for? It's like our nanas that, covered our couches in plastic so it wouldn't get ruined, because we wanted to save the couch. What were we saving the couch for, right? So I think we need to, we need some realism in our lives. I think we need a little bit of that sort of reality check to say, and it's okay. And if you can't find that in yourself, or if you're struggling with that, find someone who can help you, right? Where I am a huge believer, I've worked with life coaches, I've worked with business coaches, I've worked, find your posse, find your people that are going to support you to get to that place. And it can be online, it can be in person, it can be whatever, but it can be hard to do it alone, for sure.
So what about for you? Like, I imagine that you didn't spring fully forth feeling like this, right? So at some point in your life, I imagine there was, I can see by the look on your face that clearly it didn't start like that. So I'm curious to know, what was your moment where you were not feeling all these things, and like where you were like, the direction, the perspective that I've been using all so far to date to like organize myself or feel like I'm in control isn't working. Like this other perspective, like what was your moment?
So that's a great question, because I think it does come down to control, because I can tell you exactly when it was. So my husband owned his own business. I had 2 young children. My dad was sick. My father-in-law was sick, and my mother-in-law was sick, and
Wow.
I was working full time. And it was in those really hard months, and this too shall pass, that I knew that I had to let go of my perfectionism. I am a perfectionist at heart as well. And I call it controlled chaos, right? I call it controlled chaos. Because sometimes you are just breathing moment to moment, day to day. And I was saying to someone earlier today, the Greek word crisis It means to sift. Sift. That's literally what the word means.
Really?
Yes. Somebody told me that
That's
many years ago.
fascinating, actually.
And so when you're in a crisis, what do? We sift out all those things that are not important. When someone is sick, when there's something that really needs your attention, a loved one needs you, all of those other things are so unimportant. Other people's impressions of you, or how you're dressed, or all of those, or what you're putting on the table for dinner, those things come much less important because we are sifting out all of those other things. And I think until some of us, I know from myself, that it got to a point where like, okay, this is what I can do today. And then you can, again, we're going back to building on it. And then
Yeah.
you build. And I got to a point personally that I said, this is not the life I want to live. I'm going to create my own life. And I created my own business literally out of nothing. And that has been the best decision I ever made.
I love that. That's actually the exact statement I said to myself when I had my own moment. It was, this is not the life I want to live. And I remember it was like a startling thing because I didn't, I was like, why am I so unhappy? I have literally everything that I want. You know, I have a job, I have dogs, I have the husband, I have, you know, and I'm like, why am I so miserable and exhausted all the time? And I realized it wasn't the life I wanted to live. And it's such a powerful realization. Regarding that, you talk about in your book, you talk about Simon Sinek, which you brought him up, and like, I mean, you've heard me talk about him a couple of times, so I adore him.
Yeah.
And his book, Start With Why. And you know, when you talk about organization and why you got into organizing and working, when you work with your clients, you know, you mentioned a little bit about what you said earlier, vis-a-vis speaking about the Instagram photos and the like. But one of the things that I found like I resonated with me was that basement story where initially I went to the basement because I wanted to clear everything out so that I would feel better. But then somehow in like 15 minutes or less, the goal changed to being like, how do I get an Instagram photo? And oh my God, this is too much work. I'm exhausted. Why do you feel like the why is so important versus I just want to get organized? What does it matter? Why? Like, why does that matter?
I think the why really is we do get organized, or we get financially fit, or we eat healthy for a whole host of reasons. And it's easy to get started. What it's hard to do is stick with the path, right? So I think that the why really becomes your motivation. And I've worked with a lot of clients and they'll say, well, I want this. Well, why do you want to organize your basement? Well, my partner really wants that. Or my mom thinks my house should be more organized. Or, you know, my accountant thinks my finances should be better. That will not keep you motivated because organizing is a process. It is not an event. Okay. It is not a one-time thing. It is almost a lifestyle, if you will, right? There are choices you are going to make. It's a scaffold. I like to think of organizing as it's a scaffolding that supports the life that you want to live. And there are going to be parts of your life that are well organized, and there are going to be parts of that need some more that need some more work on them. But the why is what keeps you motivated, right? If the why is someone else's motivation or someone else making you feel like you need to do it, you may start it, but you will never stick with it. I can absolutely guarantee that. And so the why, I think, it's rarely about the stuff. And sometimes it's about the stuff. Sometimes we've moved, or sometimes, we've had a life transition or something like that. And then it's really situational. But for people that tend to be chronically disorganized, it's not about the stuff. It's what's behind the stuff. It's about the feeling. It's about the emotion. So if you can connect to that and say, I want to honor my dad's legacy. I am going to organize these photos and his Army medals because that honors him. That will keep me motivated. If it's, oh, this is the right thing to do, or I want to put up an Instagram photo, I guarantee you're not going to do that because it's time consuming and it's hard. Sometimes there's this kid's book I always tell people about, and it's going on a bear hunt. My kids love that book. And it's, you can't go around it. You can't go under it. You got to go through it. And that's what organizing is, man. You got to go through it. But when you get to the other side, it is the best feeling in the world.
Oh my gosh, it's so good.
So good, right? And that's the motivation. The why is what will make you, again, if you want to get healthy because you want to feel better, you'll stick with it. If you want to get motivated because it's your high school reunion and you want to look, a certain way, you may do that, but it's not going to stick, right?
Not after the high school reunion.
Not after the high school reunion. Yeah. Exactly. Same thing with anything. You got to connect with your why. And I think that's the most powerful part. And that's what I try to really teach my clients.
There's something else about, I feel like there's a lot of whys that people don't realize about organization. So when I was in Franklin and I hired the organizer there, which now that I'm here and I need an organizer, and lo, here you are. I think I mentioned the other day that I have a room over there that needs you.
Mhm.
But I had her name was Hope, and she came to the house and she organized it top to bottom. And I remember that the way that I felt afterwards, you actually talked about it in your book too, is you said the purpose of organization is to be able to find things when you want them. And that is when I read that, I was like, that's exactly what Hope did for me. Like, I know where everything is. And there's like this feeling of where are the batteries? I know where they are. Where's the soap? I know where that is, right? You just kind of, and there's like a good feeling of knowing where everything is. And it also, I think the other why is that it makes your day-to-day life more pleasant, when you're not feeling. Tell me a little bit about how your clients, because when you're done with your clients, because I can only
Mhm.
speak for myself in terms of how I felt, which is like a huge weight had been lifted. So much, it was like I could breathe. And it's not like I was, hoarder level where there were things everywhere, but just life happens and you build up stuff over time. And then, you've got that dress from that corporate party that you wore 6 years ago, and you're like, why do I still have this stupid dress? I don't even wear dresses. It's like, why is this here? What is this? What is it that you think your clients, like, psychologically, what does this do for them, like organization?
So I think it kind of goes back to that story of, I always relate it to how things really evolved for me to become an
Mhm.
organizer. I'd always been a pretty organized person, but when your life is really in a chaotic or crisis driven situation, knowing where to find the financial documents when someone is sick and you have to find your healthcare proxy, or you have to find the will, or you have to find that, it takes away that added stress, right? We've got a lot of stressors in our lives, right? Let's face
Mhm.
it, let's be honest, right? We are in a world that is ever evolving and not always in its best way. So I think when we are feeling out of control, or life is feeling out of control, if I can find the batteries, if I can find my insurance policy, if I can find my kids' soccer cleats so they can get out the door, if I can find, something that I borrowed from my neighbor that's weighing on me, if I can find my things in my house, that takes away one less stress, because a lot of my clients literally run around like chickens with no heads because
Mhm.
they can't find things, right? And so if you imagine that you've already got all these stressors, you've got work, family, community, all of the stuff that goes on in our daily life, and you can't find the stuff you need when you need it. That's why I always say that's what organizing is. It's finding
Yeah.
my stuff when I need it so I can go do the important things. Go for a walk, take a class, be with the people that you love, spend time. That's what we're here for. This is not a dress rehearsal. Okay. We are all in this iteration. We're only going to get one time around the sun. And what we're doing is we keep kicking that can down the road saying, someday I'm going to do that. Someday I'm going to do that.
Mhm.
But we're so busy and we're so consumed with the minutia, because we are disorganized, that we never get to do the big stuff, right? We're so consumed with the little stuff. The check is late, the payment is late, I can't find the stuff, my kid can't go on the field trip because I didn't fill out the forms. If you don't think that's stressful for everyone in your household, you are incorrect, right? So if we
Mhm.
can manage those little things through organization, that's all. And then we have time to go do the big things, right? That's why the name of the book is More Space, More Time, More Joy. That's what I want for my clients. That's what I try to give them. And that's what they feel, hopefully at the end of the process is. I'll tell you a very quick story at a client. She's fantastic. She is a rock star, and she has inherited through her family 5 storage units, just 5 storage units,
Oh my
years
gosh.
and years of storage. And
So
we
much.
recently cleared out 3 of them. She had had them for 5 years. So forget the financial piece. Imagine the emotional burden of holding on to all of that stuff.
Mhm.
And we were finally able just this fall to clean out 3 of them, 2 to go, but that's a start. But that's the kind of thing, it's a weight, it's a physical, emotional, and a psychological weight that you get to get rid of, right? You get to let that go, because that's what you're getting rid of. It's not just the stuff, it's
Mhm.
guilt, it's the worry, it's the what's in there, what do I have, who do I you let that go, and then you get to feel that. My clients say when I leave, they feel 20 pounds lighter. So I hope that that's true.
Absolutely. I can't even, like, it's the weirdest thing. I did not appreciate how important having just being organized. And I'm not a generally, like, I used to be very organized when I was younger, but as I got older, my ADHD, you know, I'm autistic, it just kind of, and so I have like that room that that's just, everything gets dumped in there. It's like the basement. There's always that room that everything gets dumped into so that everything else is organized and I clean everything out. But over time, and here's what's actually really cool, over time, it just all gets messy, right? And my thought is if you get one, like you come in and you organize the whole house just once, that lasts for, you know, the peace of mind. First of all, I lose like 20 pounds and then it stays off for like, it never comes
That's
back.
the best feeling, right? Not only do you lose it, but it stays up, and you lose that emotional weight, right? Really what it is emotional weight. It's when we talk about, you know, expectations and all these people say, I should be more organized. I should be healthier. I should be more financially fit. I should be thinner. I should be that. And I always say to my clients, look, we are where we are, right? So there's a great Asian proverb, and it's the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today, right? So when we focus on, okay, this situation, your home, your space didn't get there overnight. Okay. But we're here. So let's talk about where we are now and where you want to go and how we're going to get you there. Talking about, you know, and beating yourself up. And I hear a lot of that with my clients, beating themselves up because they're here where they are. It doesn't do us any good. Like acknowledge, right? We got to feel,
like,
we
how
got
did
to
I get here?
acknowledge it. How did I get here is
I've
huge.
said that.
Right. And a lot of times it is external forces. It's, you know, my mom was sick, or, you know, my partner passed away, and I've inherited a lot of this stuff is inherited. So I think when we acknowledge it and then say, okay, from here, what do I want? What's my why, right? Where do I want to go with this? And I think then we can start to peel back the layers of the onion to really get to the nexus of what people want and get to live the life that they want to live. Because I mean, honestly, why else are we here?
Oh, you know what? You and I are such believers in that same philosophy. In fact, you know, it's interesting that your whole thing is bringing joy to people, and it's through organization. And my whole thing is bringing joy to people through releasing the expectation, you know, the shoulding all over yourself. And so I am, you know, you mentioned, so I'm actually curious to know, you said that you felt like you were born to do this, and you know, you talked about how your mother was quite organized. And so before we jump into the networking thing, what I am curious about is you were working full-time, and then you said that you started your own business. What was there, did you know that you were going to be an organizer when you were going to start? Like, was it like, one day I'm going to be an organizer, or was it like somebody organized something? How did you decide upon this as your modality for joy creation?
It's a great question, because I always tell the story is that I had my aha moment. I'll tell you exactly what it was, and I talk about this in the book. I was away at Girls Weekend, and I had just read an article in Oprah magazine, and she had talked about professional organizing. So I've been doing this for almost 13 years. So this is a good, 13, 14 years ago. A lot of people didn't know organizing. They didn't know Marie Kondo. They didn't know the home edit. So it was a really new industry, at least here in the East Coast when I started. And I was at Girls Weekend and, doing typical stuff. And I said, I really want to do this. And my girlfriend turned to me and she said, then why don't you? And I said, why don't I? And that was, I had to do some other things in order to put that opportunity into place. But I think sometimes we need other people to sort of push us. I know, but to answer your question, being an organizer, it really does fit with my skill set. I am a manifester, as you and I have talked about. It really is just the communication piece, the book, the speaking, all of those other pieces came later, but I think they are part and parcel because I believe that I was put here. Like, this is literally my thing. I was put here on this earth to add value. And, I'm not curing cancer. I'm not doing a lot of bigger things, but I think if I can affect the world or people I've met in a positive way, then that's it. That's what I was here to do.
I love that. No wonder I adored you from the moment I met you. Okay. Yeah. So you were talking about people. Sometimes you need people around you. So I'm actually going to move a little bit into networking so I'm going to tell you a story that I told Lynn this the other day, who is the new president. So the South Shore Women's Business Network has a really great onboarding program for new members. Okay. Now when I first came to the South Shore, I didn't actually know that you guys were so good at bringing people on, right? So I sign up and then I get an email, I don't know, like a week and a half later from the president of the organization saying, "Oh, I want to get together with you on a one-on-one." I was like, "Oh my God, I felt so freaking special. You have absolutely no idea how special I felt." And it was great. We had a great time. You connected me with some people. It was literally wonderful. And now that I'm on the board, I see that we have that it's actually like an onboarding system that does that. And I'm blown away by how much value building relationships with people. So when I first moved to the South Shore, I knew that I wanted to build relationships. So what I wanted to ask you to start was, when you started your business and went and joined the South Shore Women's Business Network, did you try other networking groups before that maybe didn't resonate with you before you jumped into this one?
So that's a great, so I think if I have one regret, it's in my business, it is that I didn't start networking nearly soon
Me
enough.
too.
I was kind of like, build it and they will come. And they did, right? I think that, I am thrilled where my business is. I'm thrilled with what I've built. Having said that, if I knew now if I'd known then what I know now, I would have jumped feet first into networking. But I came out of an industry that wasn't networking heavy. I was in high tech, and then I was a recruiter. So those weren't necessarily industries that did a lot of networking. And honestly, as a woman, I didn't feel that, sort of the chamber, nothing against chambers, was really a place for me. And it didn't feel like the type of business that I had would be, it was harder for me to sort of represent myself in that sort of environment, because it wasn't brick and mortar. It wasn't something that people understood. It took a lot of, education to get people to sort of again, this is, good 12 years ago, people to sort of understand what I did. So it took me a long time, much longer than it should have, because what I lost in those years, honestly, Manessa, was the coaching and the collaboration that I wish I'd had. Because once I joined the network and once I really started to meet people, well, guess what? I found someone to do my website. I found someone to do my marketing. I found someone to do my SEO. I found people to collaborate with. And I gained not only that piece, but I gained a sense of, I have found my people. And that's what I think our greatest desire as human beings is, to be seen and acknowledged. I think that's it. And I think I do that with my clients. I know you do that with your clients, but that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that connectivity. And I think some environments do it better. I have belonged to other networks that were more B2B. I'm really more of a B2C. I'm really work more in a residential setting. So that's really a better fit for me. But I really, because a little bit of what I do really does require some education and getting to know me. People open their homes, their lives, and their businesses to me. There is a level of trust that I am absolutely humbled by. So you're not going to get that with, passing out your business card at a, at a networking meeting. It takes time to build that sort of relationship. So I think if I were to give advice to anybody, and I actually was on 2 calls earlier today, and I said, do this. Come to the events, come and join, and let people get to know you, because when they get to know you, it will resonate with you. It's not just passing out business cards. That's not the model. It is about letting people know you, being authentic, being vulnerable, and letting people see who you are, because that's the people that they want. Don't think that you have to be, I mean, obviously we need to have our brand and we need to be professional and all of that, but we also need to be authentic. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that is perfectly fine with me. If I'm not the right organizer for you, I can refer you to another 20. So I think that's what's that's most important, is networking is about putting in the time. Don't think you can show up every 6 months and you're going to get, make connections, because you're not. It is an investment of time. It really is. And I think that that's what I say to people is, invest the time, you will reap unbelievable rewards.
Absolutely. That is my regret. And I don't want to say regret, because again, I'm happy with where I'm at, but I feel like you know, when I look back at all the seeds that I planted in just the last year alone and how impactful it's been, I think to myself, my gosh, I've been doing this wrong the whole time. Like I really, I wish I had just started with networking, forget the internet, forget social media. I'm just like, you know, and so I'm curious because you and I both are of the belief that the one-to-one relationships are where the true impact is made. Like, you know, I connect with you and now you and I have a relationship and you know 600 other people. Well, now I've just opened up that network for myself, right? Whereas like online, you might see a post that I make and you might like it, but like we're not going to build that same kind of deep relationship. So I'm curious that, you know, do you think that it is good or bad? I'm trying to figure out the way to ask this question. Like, do you think that it has helped us or hurt us that social media was such a great, like that it seemed like such a great solution for people to grow? Because what I'm finding now with a lot of small businesses is that the social media isn't working. And it only works as a almost like an add-on, like a bonus to the networking that you do. So like we network and then you see me online, you're like, oh, hey, as opposed to I just see you. So how do you think that social media has impacted networking, or has it like created like a false belief that you can grow the same way? Because I certainly believe that I can grow through social media, no problem.
Well, and I think that goes back to the fallacy of conversion rate, right? So you put up a great post, people like it, and all of a sudden they're calling you for your services. That's not how it works. It certainly isn't how it works in my business, right? So I think it is about, I worked with a fantastic business coach, Nancy O'Keefe, who I acknowledge in the book, because what Nancy said to me is, Lisa, you need to become an expert in your field. You don't have to be an expert in all things, but, you know, pick the, you know, top 5 or 6 things that you really want to, you know, go deep on, and go deep on them, and be willing to talk about them. And so by building my, if I can use the word brand of the work that I've done, the community work that I do, the networking that I do, the speaking that I do, the book that I do, that I did, all of those pieces built. And it's so funny. I recently had a woman reach out to me just in this early December. And she said, Lisa, you know, can you work with my parent? They're new in the area. And I had to go back and to my hometown and I can't help. And I said, you know, great, I'll be happy to work. And I said, who referred you? And she said, Sharon referred you. And I said, Sharon referred me. She raves about you. She raves. Oh, this is a woman who was a fantastic client probably 7 or 8 years ago. So you do not know where your next referral is coming from. You don't. So it is part of, yes, social media is great, but I am not heavily on social media. I was, but what I found, Vanessa, was I was spending way too much time on it, and I was angry about it. And I was trying to, you know, make everything so perfect and put out all this content. And that wasn't where my value add was, and that's not where my business was coming from. My business was coming from the referrals that I was getting in the community, the referrals I was getting from clients, the referrals I was getting from networking, and the visibility of that, because that's really what we're talking about, is you want someone to see you as a whole person. Social media, you should have social media. We should all have a good updated website. We should all be blogging. We should all be adding fresh content, all of those things. But you cannot, if your business is solely built on, you know, your Instagram or your Facebook, I don't know how sustainable that is. I honestly, because there's so much out there, right? We are just overwhelmed with content. And, you know, I see these Instagram posts from people and I'm like, that's not real. You tell me that's an organized room, I can tell you right now that that is a staged photo. And as much as we might want that staged photo, that's not real life. I say that to my clients all the time. That's not real life. You want that? I cannot give you that. That is a dream. And so let's come back to the reality. What can we do, right? And I think that's the problem with all of social media, is that it is an ideal that we all think we should be able to achieve. Why do we all feel worse? We're supposed to go on Instagram to feel better, or Facebook to feel better. And why do I feel worse when I come up? Awful. And I think that's part of what we're talking about, is if you're using social media to build the perfection of your brand, you're going to struggle with that, because that's not a real thing. It's not. And I think that's not the work I do. It really isn't. If someone else can do that, God bless you, go for it. But that is not me. And I won't give you that, but I'll give you my best. And I think so that's how I look at it.
You know, I like to say that social media is a balanced part of your entire business diet. It's not, you know, like you can't just eat. It's like ice cream. You can't, I mean, I've tried to eat ice cream all day, every day, and it doesn't actually, it tastes great, but you feel like crap after a while.
Mhm.
And that's sort of what I found with social media over time. Like there was a brief period for about 5 to 6 years where social media was like you could do, but that you could just grow that way. But it was because it was new, right? And when something is new, like
Yes.
the way I talked about
Mm.
it was like MTV, right? When MTV was new, everybody wanted MTV because it was new and nobody had it. But eventually, by the time we got to like 88, 89, MTV was starting to struggle and it was having, you know, there were other channels, other things happening. Same thing happened with social media after 8 to 10 years of people using it. That stopped working as well. And now we're back to basics, which is who do you serve? What is your value? Who are you meeting? What relationships are you creating? And so on. I think that is like critically important.
Well, and I think you're right about, you know, it was when it was new and fresh and not everybody was on it. But, you know, I have, you know, Gen Z kids and they're like, Facebook, who's on Facebook? Who's on Instagram? We're on TikTok, we're on
Who's
this.
on
And I'm like,
Facebook?
you're not even there anymore. So it's like, and to try to keep up with the algorithms, right? It, and you know, or say, oh, I have someone do it for me, and that's great, but it has to feel authentically you. And I think that's the challenge. Is most of us are discerning enough consumers to say
Mhm.
that's a packaged product you were pushing at me, and that is not authentic. And I'm, yeah, I guess I'm at an age where I just want authentic. So wrinkles and
Well,
all.
you know, and
Right?
that's all my listeners are too. Like all the listeners are like, we're all around that same age where we're like, we're all realizing we've all had that same epiphany, I think, that which is this is it. This is the one shot you get.
This
And
is
and
it.
we're all like,
Yeah.
how do I want to show up? And I think for the challenge for a lot of us is that like we're all programmed and conditioned a very specific way, you know, those of us
Mhm.
who grew up Gen X and boomers before us, right? And um I feel like we now are, so now we're like, oh, I don't want to live this way, but there's no blueprint for that because, you know, so
No.
we have to figure it out as we go. And what I love, this is why I created the podcast, was so that because so many of my listeners are like, I know I want a better or a different life, I just don't know how to get there. And like, and so bringing in everyone, every person or every role that played a role in my life, getting to the space where I'm like, I'm living the life I want. There's an organizer, there's a therapist, you know, it's like, and the organization component was critical. And this is why I knew this would be all over the place, because the networking component was the other critical piece. Because you said something earlier where you said, as human beings, we want to be seen and acknowledged. And I feel like we want to feel like we belong somewhere,
Yes.
right? Like we belong somewhere.
Mhm.
And some of those networking groups that you mentioned, you said you didn't feel like you belonged there, but like there's, and I'm just going to totally plug SSWBN again, because I feel like I belong there, you know, and which is hard for me to feel like I belong in places because I don't, a lot of people don't feel like I belong in a lot of places. But immediately I felt like I belonged, and it was such a wonderful experience. So another question I have for you is, so when you were, you know, like during oh fuck, my ADHD kind of, it blew in. Give me a sec. Gerald, we're gonna have to edit this out. The part where I do. Ah, yes. Um, when you think about the, like we were talking earlier about how people have been using I'm sorry, I totally spaced and now I can't get it back. Talking about, had something to do with networking, and you were talking about um earlier on social media, people are authentic. Oh, that's what it was. Okay. The question that I was asking before is, when we were talking about social media and you said that we have become discerning, we are discerning consumers, right? And what I have found is that, you know, and you mentioned this about Instagram, is that we try to create this perfect look, right? But we don't take into consideration the fact that our consumers, like we just want, it's like we want people to like us. Going back to that original conversation where I was saying that people want to feel like they're seen, like they're acknowledged, like they belong. And a lot of people are using social media for that, and they're not getting what they're looking for. So if someone is out there right now who is using social media exclusively, and we're sort of talking about, hey, you probably want to think about networking. How would you recommend they go about looking for a networking group in their area? Like, what are some of the search parameters that you, or like, how would you, like, how can they find a place, and what, like, and they're going to run into places that they don't work for them. So how do you recommend that they deal with that kind of like the process of finding your group, your people?
You know, it's interesting because sometimes you have to, what's the phrase? You have to kiss a lot of frogs before you become prince or princess, or however that goes,
Yeah.
because I was at, I was invited to a BNI, and I was sitting next to someone who I immediately connected with, and she looked at me and she said, "This isn't for me." And I said, "This isn't for me." Nothing against BNIs, they're fantastic. And she said, "You should come to this networking group." And I have been part of that networking group now for over 10 years. So I think sometimes you just do have to go. And if there are visitor days at a local
Mm-hmm.
organization or networking group, try it. Some chambers are fantastic. We're lucky because the South Shore Chamber is great. The Plymouth Area Chamber is great. The Metro South Area, there are really good. And there are some really good chambers. A lot of local chambers are very, very good. So I would say kiss some frogs, like get out there and try some. But I really think networking sort of breaks down into two components. And for me, in my estimation, there's two kinds, but really it's about either finding variety or finding like with like. So I am involved with two networking organizations. One, we are all organizers, right? We all sit around, we talk, we're all drinking the Kool-Aid, we're all singing the same songs, because I don't have to explain to them when we have all of those things in common, and that is fantastic because we have all those things in common. What I love about the SSWBN, for instance, is that nobody does what I do. And yet I get so much value out of that because I
Mm-hmm.
don't have to be in your same line of business to learn something from you. I actually can learn, and I'm not there to learn. I'm at a point in my business, in my life, where I don't just go to networking to learn business tips or marketing.
Yeah.
I'm there to learn. I'm going there to hear from different voices and from different people, and to grow, not my business, just my business, but myself. So that's why finding organizations that have a little bit more of a broader industry is a great place to be, because most of people, they belong to an organization that is, in their industry, right? Because that's
Mm-hmm.
good, that's helpful for networking. But find one. So go and kiss some frogs. Like, if you know people, ask the question. If you know someone that's a super networker, say, what organization do you belong to? Who would you recommend that I reach out to? Is there an organization that you like? And get on your local Facebook, because there are people that do that. So, and oftentimes they'll sort of advertise, if you will, on there about an open meeting. So go
Mm-hmm.
to some open meetings. That's really what worked for me. Like, find people that. So what's the phrase? How does it go? Some people, are meant there. I don't believe I don't believe in happenstance. I believe in synchronicity, right? I believe
Mm-hmm.
somebody sat next to you, somebody sat next to me at that meeting to lead me there. I absolutely believe that. And so, talk to people. And I know for those who are introverts, believe it or not, I'm an introvert. It is hard to strike up a conversation, but ask the question. If you know someone that you think is a crazy successful person, or you admire someone in business, ask them, because there is no greater compliment than to be asked, right? People want to share. I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
I believe people want to give back. And I think when we ask people, it is a huge compliment. Where do you get your hair cut? Where'd you get those shoes? What organization do you like? Where do you like to go for dinner?
Mm-hmm.
Ask people. They want to tell you that. And they don't think it's prying. They think it's a compliment, and they want to help. You'd be surprised how many doors will open if you just ask. Ask,
That's
you shall receive.
asking, just ask. Like I've heard you say that
Just
many,
ask.
many times. Just ask.
Yeah.
And do you like, what about, because so this is something that a lot, and I know that a lot of my listeners have done this. I know that I have done this. I don't do it anymore, but where you go to a networking group and you go to like one event, you hand out your business cards and you're like, this doesn't work for me, and you leave.
Yeah.
And then you go to the and I've handed out your business cards and you're like, all right, this doesn't work for me, you leave, right? Like, um, tell me about why that doesn't, like, I think we talked briefly about this before, but I think that a lot of people think that networking is really about, when you go to the networking event, the purpose is, you and I are going to this event, there's like 20 people there, I'm going to pass out my business card, and my purpose right? My goal is to make sure that one of these people converts to a customer tonight, right? And that's
Yeah.
how a lot of people go into networking. Tell me your thoughts on this.
So I don't see networking that way. And that's why when I was in, when I was part of organizations that were looking just to trade referrals, it didn't work for me because I believe that my value comes from, it's a long-term relationship. So I would say that if you are going to a networking, and I'll be honest with you, I still walking to networking events and I want to throw up on my shoes, right? I always say,
You know that.
honestly, I'm really an introvert at heart, but look for somebody who's smiling. That's what I always say. Look for somebody who also isn't engaged, right? Look for someone who also looks like they want to shrink into the floor. Go up. That's the person you want to talk to, right? Don't, there's always going to be someone with a little bit of a crowd around them, right?
Mhm.
There's a queen bee or a king in every environment. Find the person that's not that person. Find someone who looks just as uncomfortable as you and say, hi, I'm so glad you're here tonight. How was the traffic getting here? And strike up a conversation because that's the connection we want, right? That's where we want to be. And that person may not be, I met someone at a recent event and I just went up and introduced myself. And this person ended up, we had a fantastic conversation, ended up taking a board position on another board. Like you don't know, right? We don't know. We assume, right, that the person you want to talk to is the one with the crowd around them. That's not the person. You want someone who you're able to make that connection. If you can walk out of an event with one good connection, forget the business cards. Business cards are great, send follow-up emails, do all those things. But if you have one good conversation that leads to coffee or one other, conversation, we're all 6 degrees of separation. And I know your listeners are everywhere, but on the South Shore, man, it is 6 degrees of separation for
So
everyone,
much. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So much. So, and I think that's true of everywhere. So keep making those calls. And yeah, sometimes it's, just go up and just have that conversation. How, are you enjoying the food or whatever? It doesn't matter. Someone is going to appreciate that. And I think, because that's what I would appreciate. I would appreciate it when
I know if I'm all alone,
so even, so step into someone else's shoes and what is the question you would want to be asked at an event, right? What brought you here tonight? Tell me about your business, and I think that's where the magic happens. I really do. There's a lot to be said. And you can also do that virtually. I mean, it doesn't have to be in person, if you have a wide flung network, attend a virtual event and find that person that you were like, oh, wow, that's so intriguing, and connect with them. I think it's easier than ever.
It really is. You don't know this, but I learned everything that I know about networking from watching you. Like not in a creepy way, but
well, that's kind of scary.
guys, like not in a creepy way. I totally am watching you. No, it's so weird because like I've only known you for about a year at this point, maybe not even that long. But after that first meeting, which I thought I was the only one. I was a felt very special, and we all should feel special. By the way, I am very special, and everyone that we meet with is special. I didn't realize then that is what's special. It's what's special about this community too. And then I listened to you and I listened to the things that you said. And I thought, my God, I've been doing networking wrong all this time. And so I started to mimic what you were doing. Like you'd ask people for coffee. I would just start calling people and ask them for coffee. And I started drinking coffee. Like literally I started drinking fucking coffee for this. Because remember when we first went out,
I know. I was
you had coffee and I think I had hot chocolate because they didn't have tea. That was so funny because I said that day I had 2 cups of coffee my whole life, and I've had so much coffee in this last year, Lisa. It's all your fault.
Thank you.
And yeah, my wife thanks you. So I started inviting people out as well, and then I would see you connecting with people, and I'm like, okay, that's how I'm going to do it. And I started to and I have seen everything change from like my life is totally different now. So this is why, by the way, I wanted to have you on here to share these things, is because my life has changed as a result of your networking. I want to say like networking IQ, EQ, but you know what I mean? Like your grasp of networking. And I wanted to make sure that my listeners heard it as well. So as we wrap up, I wanted to ask, do you have any parting words of wisdom that you'd like to share with my listeners?
If I have parting words of wisdom, I do actually, believe it or not. So
well, I knew you would.
I know. I'm organized like that. So this morning I do the Oracle cards. Yeah, I do an Oracle card every day. And so some days when I pick my Oracle card, people like, an organizer is very woo-woo. It
These
really,
are my people, dude. They're all woo.
So this is the one that I picked today, and it was and under the prosperity message, this is what it said. It says, you are not, okay, this card reminds you that you can't be all things to all people. You are not going to be popular with everyone, and that has to be okay with you. Be clear about your mission, your brand, your work persona, and your contribution to the world, as these must be based on what you authentically have to offer, not something you think will sell or you perceive they may want. You will attract abundance by being completely yourself, staying your own lane. That's where you will shine and where you will experience prosperity. And I think that's, if I were to leave you with a thought, that just be you. No one expects you, and anyone that expects you to be something then you are not, does not have your best intentions at heart. And it could be someone who loves you very, very dearly. We all have those people in our lives. But I think the greatest lesson that I have learned is this is it. This is one go around the sun. Do the things that bring you joy. If you can find work or community or whatever it is that helps you get out of bed every day and you just want to smile and go do good things, then that's what you should do. And find out who you authentically are, because trust me, inauthentic may look pretty, or shiny, because we do love shiny, but after a while that shine wears off, and a little bit of patina is a lovely thing. So take it from someone with a little bit of patina on them. So it's good to get that experience and be authentically you. And if you want to thrive in your business, be authentically you. Be a little bit messy, be a little bit whatever, because that's what people really are attracted to. People aren't attracted to me because they think I can solve all their problems. They're attracted to the work that I do because they see me as a partner in helping them. I don't fix people. I don't organize people. I help them get organized. So if you can position yourself as someone who is, as I like to say, I'm the Hamish to your Katniss and the Obi-Wan to your Luke. Like, that's what I'll do, but I'm not going to fix it for you. You are in charge of your destiny, right? So find out what authentically makes you happy. Stay in that authentic place, as challenging as that might be sometimes, and you will thrive. And yeah, read the book, reach out to me. You're happy to share my contact information, Vanessa. Yeah.
Yes, it's going to be, contact information is available on the show notes.
There's
So the book, the link to buy the book is going to be in the show notes. All of Lisa's links will be in the show notes. I cannot even begin to tell you, the time that I've been fortunate enough to spend with Lisa has made such a difference in my life. And I'm lucky because I'm in the same organization as her. But if you are not in the same organization as her, either you can join the SSWBN at sswbn.org, or you can email Lisa, go to her website, and get some time with her. Lisa, you are the best. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thrilled to be here. Thank you for everything.